In this video with the Canon 7D Mark II, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the focus system, and in particular the focus groupings and what the main differences are. The first of these focus modes is called Spot AF. A little bit confusing because people sometimes get it mixed up with spot metering. It's got nothing to do with metering. This really is, it's a single point, and it's about half the size of a regular autofocus point. So when you move it around, you can watch here, one click with the joystick moves the focus point one click on the screen. So its main use is for very precise applications. If you're shooting through grasses, if you're shooting through wire fences, then you might need the precision that spot autofocus uses. Canon in their literature say not to use it for very fast moving subject matter, just because it covers such a small area. It can be easy to miss the subject, but it's your choice whether you use it or not. The next one, which I access just by pulling down on the little autofocus joystick and this lever here, is called single point autofocus. So this is the default option, and you'll see that as you get around the camera more, you can't actually remove this one from the options. So it's always there. So it's twice the size of AF Spot, the actual sensor that's active. To move it around, again, one click on the joystick, left or right, takes you one click around the grid. I use this one more than any other focus grouping, so it's my favorite focus grouping. Difficult to keep it on a moving subject, but when you do, you get great results. So I'm now going to move to the next one, which is called expanded autofocus area. So here you've got a single focus point, as you can see, with 4 helpers. How it works is the camera will try to focus where the hollow square is, which is the middle one at first, and when or if focus becomes less accurate or is lost, it will then hand over to one of the 4 helper points around it. A lot of folk use this one for birds in the air. It gives you obviously 5 times as much working area and 5 times as much margin for error as a single point perhaps. When you want to move around the focus grid, when you're in expanded AF area, one click to the right takes you one grid over, one click up takes you one row of autofocus points up or down. So there's no speed advantage to moving around with that one. We're going to go on to the next one, which is again called expanded autofocus area, this time with 8 helpers. Identical behavior to the single point with 4, except you've now got 8 helpers. Moving around the grid is the same, one row up or down, one row equals one click of the focus joystick. We're now going to move over to one called zone autofocus. So what Canon is telling you is that cluster of 12 autofocus points will prioritize the subject that's closest to it and focus on that. So what you have here is control over where you're focusing in a part of your screen, but not precise control on exactly where your focus point is at any time. I'd use this setting only when I have a lot of depth of field and the light is good. So even if I'm slightly not locked on to the part of my subject that I need, I hope to have enough depth of field that I still get it. It can work really well for birds in the sky, but not so well for birds against a similar background to the bird. Another advantage of AF Zone, as you can see, if I push the button, one click of the joystick moves the cluster 1/3 of the frame. So to get from one side to the other is simply one click or 2 clicks to get right across the screen. So if you need to recompose fast, You've got a lot of depth of field, the light is good, AF zone might do it for you. We move on to the next one, which is even a bigger zone, this time really just dividing up that whole grid of 65 points into 3 zones. So it behaves exactly the same as the first zone. We don't choose which point finds focus in that cluster, usually the closest thing or the thing with the most contrast, but it's quick. You can get around just with one click left or right. So then we get to the last autofocus point selection option in the 70, which is called auto selection 65 point. So in this one we've got 65 points active. The camera will start to focus with the point that you select. Moving around the grid is not shown on my screen here, but you can move it one click at a time. But the camera will also try to track the subject if you're in 65 point AF mode, and it will try to hand over from one focus point to the next around the grid. I found that very effective with slower moving subjects or ones that are well contrasted, well lit, but less effective as you increase the speed of the moving subject, and also if the background is very similar to your subject, then I find that the 65 point focus option tends to be less accurate than maybe a single point. So in the next video on the 7D Mark II's autofocus, we're going to be talking more about the selection modes and also managing the number of focus points on the screen. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep getting videos about Canon gear from a wildlife photographer's perspective.